We live in a world of acceptance. People tell themselves all the time, and really anyone who will listen about their past. And because of it, why they can't do this, that, or the other. And the people that they tell, they're quick to respond. They say things like, "Oh, that's so sad. It's totally understandable why you're fat. Oh, it's totally understandable why you're lazy or poor, unmotivated, undisciplined, emotional wreck, a bad parent, why you cheated, or anything else that people like to make excuses for." So allow me to be blunt here for a second. If you or someone you know are are an active participant in this conversation that I just mentioned above, you have an anchor tied tightly around your neck and you are heading towards the bottom of the ocean.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
What is up, leaders? Welcome to the Fire Forged Leader podcast. I'm Steve Baumgartner, your host and founder, and I would really like to take you on a journey today of the Forge, where we're going to be exploring lessons learned on the front lines of leadership. What we're going to be talking about today is how do you take that anchor from around your neck and turn that into an asset? So with that, let's just move right into story time. Now, I talk about my kids a lot. I've learned a lot from them, as I've mentioned before. My 6-year-old daughter started riding a bike without training wheels when she was 4 years old. To be honest, none of the 3 little kids that I have right now have ever used training wheels. And that's probably another story, so I'll save that message for a little while later. But my 4-year-old boy actually started riding when he was 3, and my 2-year-old son is also on track to be riding at 3. Now, going back to Dom, I always talk about Dom, my 4-year-old. He's a tremendous risk taker. He likes to go fast. He likes to go hard. He likes to try new things. So with that, he also takes some pretty hard falls, right? I'm pretty sure that this kid has not had one layer of skin on his knee all summer. And he's a constant blood stain, really. I mean, anywhere where he goes, we find a little stain of blood here or there. But it's because he takes these risks, right? So I've seen him take that dive on his bike before. And I've seen people while we're at a bike trail and they just come running up, flocking to his rescue. And then they look around, look for that parent. And they see me and I'm walking up, right? I come strolling up. But the entire time I'm talking to my son. I'll say things like, "Hey, Dom, you all right? Why don't you go ahead and get back up, buddy? Let's go ahead and wipe it off. Let's get the dirt out of there. And let's take a look at it. You doing okay?" Now, what they don't see is that I've already assessed the damage from afar. I know my son. I know how he reacts. I know when he's really hurt or when he's hurt his pride. And if it were something serious, I'd go running to him because I know he needs me in that moment. But I understand him well enough that I know exactly what he needs in the moment. So when he answers the last question, Dom, are you okay? He usually tells me, nods his head yes, or he's got a little whimper and he says, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I'll say something like, "Okay, good. Let's go ahead and shake it off." Right? We've been doing this for a long time. So he usually just stands up, he does this little body wiggle, he does this little shake, and he's right as rain after that. And then it's time for my next question. And I always ask him, "Dom, that was a pretty hard fall. What did you learn from it? What did you learn?" And generally, he's used to this routine. And he will answer me something like, "You know what, Dad? I turned too sharp around that corner, and I need to either go wider in my turn or I need to lean into it more." Or he'll answer me something like, "You know what? I need to look for rocks while I'm taking corners." Whatever the case may be. But he answers, he gets back on the bike, and then he takes off for the next lap. Now, I'll tell you, people aren't used to this kind of uh, leadership with kids. There's many parents out there that think that I'm crazy. There's many parents out there that don't think that I care about my children. But let's talk about results. All right. And this isn't work. I know that. So when I'm talking about results, I'm really talking about what is my son doing at this moment after this interaction, right? Well, my son, he doesn't stay there. He doesn't cry about it anymore. He gets up, he gets back on his bike, he tries again, he learns from it. And I think probably the most important thing, it doesn't matter what all these other parents or people around are thinking or saying or whatever else. He keys into my voice because we have that relationship, we have that trust. I'm the calm in his storm. He looks to me for direction. So, with that being said, his fall just became an asset for him. So, think about that for a second. He failed, right? He took a corner too sharp, hit rocks, whatever the case may be. He failed on his bike. He fell down, he got hurt. We talked through it. He learned from it, and he went out there and tried again. It became an asset. Now let's take the other side of the coin, and let's say that I went running over there as fast as I can. I'm freaking out. I snatch him up. He's my little 4-year-old. I'm patting his back and saying things like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're okay." I feel like that. Don't get me wrong. But now I'm freaking out. I'm jittery. I'm holding him tight. And I'm saying things like, "Oh, you could have been seriously injured. You need to be safer in the future. Don't ride so fast." Blah 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 blah. Well, what would he do in that moment? Well, I can tell you because I've had quite a few kids and I've made a lot of mistakes. He would have stayed strapped around my neck. I'd be carrying this little boy and his bike, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. The part where it goes sideways is as I'd be carrying him through this park or wherever we're at, he's constantly building up fear. And that's when the anchor takes hold in our lives. So that's a pretty simple story. Let's throw something out a little bit more complex. And I'm going to use my own story for this one. So if you've been listening to this show for any time now, you're going to know that I was a drug addict. When I was 22 years old, I was looking at going away for 36 years for drug charges as well as some criminal activity. I had physically went up to my 3 older kids and told them goodbye. I had told them that they were going to grow up without a father. And basically, I'd given up. So at this point in time, that anchor was tied very, very tight around my neck. And it had me at the bottom of the ocean. I was defeated. My defeat, though, was inside of my own damn head. It wasn't reality. It wasn't given to me by something else. I had defeated myself. My self-worth was totally tied up in being abused as a child. It was tied up in being given up by my birth parents. It came from me believing all of the, oh, poor Steve comments growing up, and me not dealing with issues at hand. Okay. So, guys, we all know people who have had it rough. And I'll tell you right now, I know a lot of people who have had it way rougher than I did. And I'll also tell you that they're as successful, if not more successful than I am. I know people who were molested as children, raped as adults, trapped in human trafficking rings. I know people who have been shot, who have had body parts removed, and many other unspeakable things. Something I've learned, though, is the ones who are successful, the ones who are living lives worth living, are the ones that have turned their scars into assets and not let them be anchors. And that's what I'm constantly working on doing. I do it here in this podcast. I'm constantly taking my past and speaking to people's hearts through it. I let them know that they're more than what they think they are. You will not hear me go, yeah, okay, that's understandable. I get it why you're lazy. I mean, you didn't have I don't do that. But I do let people know that they're more than what they think they are, no matter what their past looks like. So how do you turn your past into an asset? It's not easy, y'all. It's not easy one little bit. But I'm going to tell you, it's well worth it. And this is going to sound a little bit like a 12-step group going on here today, but it's not. I'm not going to have you chain smoke cigarettes, drinking coffee, sitting in a circle in a dark room, telling all your worst fears to each other. All right? What I want you to do is I want you to get real with yourself for a little bit, okay? And if you're dealing with hurts and you're blaming yourself, I want you to take this 4-step process. I want you to write down that hurt. All right? Detail it out. So, for example, I'm going to use something from my past. I would write something like, I feel worthless. My biological parents abused and neglected me, and I was removed from my home by the state. All right, so we're going to write down that hurt and make sure we detail it out. Now, the next step I want you to take is take that sentence or paragraph, and I want you to remove any of the blame and rewrite it. All right. So we're going to strike out that I feel worthless because, and we're simply going to write, my biological parents abused and neglected me, leading to me being removed from the home by the state. All right. So we're going to take that detail, chop it down to the facts. Step 3, I want you to, just scribble down characteristics around the hurt. And then, really just dive into really just the characteristics around it, right? So going back into my example, my biological parents were young. They were drug addicts. They were criminals. When I was 18 and I met my biological mom, she told me I was conceived on a pool table at a bar. Yeah, great. Anyways, those are all characteristics of this hurt, right? Ultimately, though, they all combine into these people were not capable of raising children, which leads us to the last part. I want you to rewrite that hurt again. My biological parents abused and neglected me, which led to me being removed from the home by the state. They were incapable of raising kids due to their age, addiction, and criminal behavior. So I want you to look at that and now just forgive yourself. There's really nothing to forgive yourself on, but forgive yourself. It should be easy now because you didn't do a damn thing for what other people did to you. Once again, we are weird piles of human goo, and we internalize and take things on ourselves and call ourselves worthless because of what someone else did to us. It's just part of the human condition. But when we rewrite this out and we're able to forgive ourselves, because look at it. I had nothing to do with my biological parents being drug addicts and young and incapable of raising kids and criminals. So look at that. I started off, I felt worthless. That worthless feeling dragged me down to the bottom of this ocean. I was gasping for air. That worthless feeling also took me down the same path as my biological parents. I got married young. I had children. I was an addict and I was a criminal. The cycle just repeated. The anchor is really that repeating pattern of behavior for me because I felt like I was worthless. But there was nothing to be worthless for. If I would have known this framework, I could have stripped that away and changed my whole trajectory. But I'll also tell you that that's not always how it works. So I've been able to release myself from that anchor. I've allowed myself to get to the top of the water. I've looked around and I've caught a breath. I've utilized this message. I've reframed it to where I know where I can help other people work through their hurts. It's not by rushing over to aid them at every little boo-boo they get when they fall. Rather, it's helping them get up, shake it off, and learn from the incident. But wait a second. I also told you that I continued the cycle. And I'm sure that this has happened to many of the listeners of this podcast. You've done the same things. And when you repeat those things, when you repeat those hurts in your own life, you also have to deal with that baggage. So now we need to look at ourselves. All right, we looked at the externals. We've forgiven ourselves out of things that other people have done. The steps are pretty much the same here, except for there's a few additional. So let's write down that hurt. So for me, I'm a horrible person because I abused my adult children emotionally and physically when they were younger. Next, we need to remove that blame again and rewrite the statement and just make it fact-based. I'm not a horrible person. I did, however, abuse my children emotionally and physically when they were younger. That's a fact. Next, we need to add the characteristics back into that statement and rewrite it. I abused my children emotionally and physically when they were younger. I was young. I was an addict. I didn't learn how to deal with my emotional hurts from my biologic parents or the things that I dealt with growing up in my childhood. And I took all of these hurts out on my own children. Those are the characteristics around it. So let me state that again. I abused my children emotionally and physically when they were younger. I was a young addict that did not learn how to deal with his emotional hurts from childhood, and I took it out on my own children. All right, so here's where we make a little diversion. We have to heal the self first. If we do not heal first, we cannot heal our relationships. It starts with ourselves. We need to look inward before we can look outward. So we got to deal with our own issues as the next step. If you're an addict, go out and source the help that you need for that. And when I say addict, drugs, alcohol, pornography, whatever the case may be for the hurt that you're dealing with. It might be that you and your wife are going at it like rabid dogs. Well, that hurt might be caused from you. You need to deal with whatever that is. Improve yourself, regain your self-worth. But you can only do that through dealing with your issues. Now that we've dealt with our own issues and we're regaining our self-worth, we're going to hit a point where we need to repair those relationships. And sometimes you're not able to, right? But if you're able to repair those relationships, reach out to these people that you've hurt. I've reached out to my children and I've apologized. I've been sincere in that apology, and you need to be as sincere as you possibly can be in that apology. You have to identify you were wrong in it. No matter where it came from, you need to own it. And they may not accept it. They may not. You may get divorced. But at least you're on the right side of yourself if you try to repair those relationships. And even if you do get divorced, you can still work on the relationship with your ex-spouse. This is healing for you as much as it is for them. But then you need to go that extra mile. You need to release them from the cycle. You need to let them know that what you did was not a reflection on them or their worth. It was because of you. You need to let them know that you went through some things and that before you didn't take ownership of those things, that you didn't deal with them properly, but you're taking ownership now. And this is who you are today. And I would really recommend that you spend a lot of time on this one because you need to free others. They say that over 50% of men who were abused become abusers themselves. That's a high rate. And I think it's through just this hurt cycle, this cycle of not being able to repair these hurts and taking the blame for that and tying that anchor around your neck and going to the bottom of the ocean and repeating that cycle over and over and over again. So release them from the cycle. So I could go on and on about this topic. I got a lot of examples. I've had a ton of failures in my life in different areas, and you'll hear about them over time. But these failures in my life are no longer anchors for me. They're assets. And that's how I've made so much growth in such a short amount of time, is because I allow them to be assets in my life. Yeah, I was this other person. This is how I acted. Excuse me, I'm going to take that out of there. I wasn't that person. That is how I behaved. I am something more than that. And I was able to rise above that. And now I can look at every one of those as assets. And I am really sorry for the people that I hurt along the way. I truly am. But beyond the people that I hurt, I would not give up those lessons for anything, because now I live on top of the water. So I hope you can take something away from this. This was, I went from the last episode being a full-on rant to this one being very, very solemn and serious. But this whole idea of, the anchor and assets has really been hitting me lately. I've been talking to a lot of men on the topic of their pasts and, keeping them down, and, it acts as this anchor. And I just want to give everybody a way out, because I know how much weight that anchor can be. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for the day. But before I go into the outro, I'd like to invite y'all to check out my family's little homeschooling business. If you've been listening, we do this little business so that we can teach our children real principles out in the real world. We create things, a lot of custom work using a laser. We do some sublimated works and quite a few other things. Check out the store. We have some nice pre-made things, some cool mugs, coasters, wood crafts. We've even got some earrings up there now made out of wood, and a lot of other things. But if there's something that you don't see that you'd like created, hey, drop us a line on the website. If there's something that you'd like custom made, there's a good chance we could do it. And you can find this all at www.secondchaptercreatives.com. That's the number 2 ND chaptercreatives.com. The more that you order, the more chances my children get to learn about the business that they manage. So with that being said, leaders, you have come here to listen to this message, but listening is not enough. I need to know what you're going to apply this week this month and this year. Remember, when you become a better leader, you ultimately become a better spouse. You become a better parent. You become a better coworker, and ultimately that person that others want to follow. So start growing in your leadership skills. Do it for your family, your community, the ones you lead at work, and beyond all, lead with intent, my friends. So if you've appreciated what you heard here today, I really invite you to leave a rating and review and smash that subscribe button on whatever podcasting app you're currently listening to. The rating and reviews help bring us up in the charts so that it gets out to more people. And of course, the subscribe button is for you. You won't miss a single episode if you hit that subscribe button. So continue to join us in the Forge as we bring you lessons learned on the front lines of leadership. We have had some pretty darn good guests here as of late. Tony Ojeda, Ray Cash-Care. We got Nick Lavery lined up. However, he had to reschedule, so he won't be into August now. Nancy Regan. We also have Drago Zierden. We're working on a couple others. We have Father Michael Butler. The list goes on and on. It's going to be amazing. So keep on listening. Keep on joining us here in the Forge as we keep on bringing you quality content.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the Forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the Forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the Forge.